I froze. On my phone screen, my sister's TikTok was playing, me at the family barbecue, screaming into a karaoke mic, off-key and drunk. 5,000 strangers had already laughed at it. By noon, my coworkers in downtown Portland were passing it around like a meme. My boss looked at me with pity. This wasn't an accident, it was deliberate. My own family thought humiliating me online was funny. My chest tightened as another notification popped up. A Facebook post, this time from my mom, calling me an embarrassment. I wanted to vanish. Instead, I smiled at my desk, hands trembling, heart pounding. And that was only the beginning. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, in a small gray house that always smelled like fried onions and cigarette smoke. My name is Serena Whitlow. I'm 30 now, but for as long as I can remember, my family has treated me like I was the punchline of every joke. Dad, Lowell, worked as a plumber. His hands were always rough, his voice always loud. He liked to remind me that real work meant lifting pipes and fixing leaks, not staring at screens. He never once asked what I actually did at Blue Peak Labs, the tech company where I worked as a UX researcher. To him, my job was useless. To him, I was useless. Mom, Irene, was softer in voice but sharper in judgment. She worked part-time at a corner grocery store and spent every free minute scrolling Facebook, typing in all caps, sharing church memes, and posting updates about our family. She loved showing off Melinda, my younger sister, who she called her star. But when it came to me, her posts were either non-existent or humiliating. And then there was Melinda, 26, pretty, loud, and spoiled. She had a small following on TikTok, and my parents treated that like a legitimate career. Every time she got 100 likes, they congratulated her like she'd just graduated college. Meanwhile, when I finished a major project at work, no one even noticed. Growing up, it was always the same. On Melinda's 16th birthday, Dad rented out a party hall, decorated it with balloons, and surprised her with a Trader Joe's gift basket stacked with snacks and a shiny new iPhone. On my 16th birthday, I got a used sketchbook and a card signed "Love, Mom and Dad." They forgot to buy me a cake. It didn't stop there. By the time I turned 21, I had saved up to buy my first car, a used Mazda CX-5. I was proud of it. It wasn't flashy, but it got me to work and back. At dinner, Dad laughed so hard he nearly spilled his beer. Still driving that rust bucket? One day you'll understand real success when you buy a Tesla. Everyone at the table laughed with him, except me. I learned to keep my head down. I learned to swallow every insult, every eye roll, every backhanded comment. I told myself that once I built a stable career, once I moved into my own place in Portland, things would change. But even after landing a good job at Blue Peak Labs, even after paying my own bills, the treatment stayed the same. I was never enough for them. Still, I tried. I called home on Sundays. I drove out to Gresham for barbecues and birthdays. I brought wine, pies, sometimes even catered food. And every time I hoped, just a little, that maybe this time they would treat me with respect. That maybe they'd notice I wasn't a failure. That maybe they'd be proud. But respect never came. Instead, my role in the Whitlow family was fixed, the one they could laugh at. The one they could ignore, the one who never measured up. I didn't know it then, but all those years of being dismissed and overlooked were just setting the stage. The cruel jokes, the favoritism, the little humiliations, they were building towards something much bigger. And when it finally happened, it would be public, it would be online, and it would change everything. Back then, I thought the little things didn't matter. A forgotten birthday, a careless insult, but stacked together year after year, they shaped how my family saw me and how I almost saw myself. Take holidays, for example. Thanksgiving was always a production in our house. Mom would cook a massive turkey, invite the neighbors, and line up the dining table with decorations she found on sale at Target. Melinda got the seat at the center, right beside Dad. I was shoved to the far end, next to the kids' table, even when I was 25. One Thanksgiving, I walked in with a homemade pumpkin pie, something I'd baked after a 12-hour workday. I placed it on the table, proud that I'd actually managed to do something festive. Dad barely glanced at it. 2 minutes later, he cut a slice from the Costco pumpkin pie Melinda had brought and announced to everyone, "Now this is the real deal." My pie stayed untouched until the end of the night. Birthdays weren't much different. On Melinda's 21st, she got a surprise dinner at Olive Garden balloons and a $200 gift card. For mine, a late text from Mom saying, "Hope you had a good day," When I asked Dad why they hadn't planned anything, he laughed and said, "You're too old for that nonsense." And then there were the comparisons. Constant, relentless comparisons. Melinda would show off a new outfit she bought from Zara, and Mom would clap like she'd won a fashion award. If I wore a blazer for work, she'd frown and whisper, "Too serious. You look like you're going to a funeral." One night, I mentioned how my team at Blue Peak Labs had landed a contract with a major client. It was huge for me, months of research finally paying off. Dad didn't even look up from his plate. Instead, he said, "So when are you going to get a real job? You can't spend your life playing with computers." Melinda giggled. Mom nodded. My chest felt like it was caving in. Even small details became ammunition. I liked to drive out to Mount Hood on weekends, clear my head, maybe hike a trail. When I mentioned it once, Dad muttered, "Only people with no friends go hiking alone." Melinda snapped a photo of me tying my boots, posted it on her Instagram story, and captioned it, "Miss Independent," because no one asked her to hang out. It wasn't just at home either. At church potlucks, Mom would introduce Melinda as our little influencer, bragging about her TikTok followers. When she got to me, she'd shrug, "This is Serena. She works with computers or something." The way people's smiles flattened when they shook my hand, that burned. I kept quiet most of the time. I told myself it wasn't worth the fight. But inside, I cataloged every slight, every dismissal. I remembered Dad's smirk when he called me a failure. I remembered Mom's voice, dripping with disappointment. I remembered Melinda's laugh whenever I tried to speak up. For years, I thought this was just my normal. Families play favorites, I told myself. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I really wasn't enough. But deep down, I knew better. I knew there was a line between teasing and cruelty. Between being family and being enemies under the same roof. And I didn't realize it then, but the line was about to be crossed. Because the day they decided to take their mockery online, to turn me into a public joke, was the day everything changed. The 4th of July was supposed to feel like tradition. Fireworks, barbecue, the smell of burgers and corn drifting through the backyard in Gresham. I told myself it would be fine, just another family gathering. I'd show up, smile, eat my plate of food, and leave before the jokes cut too deep. But nothing about that day was fine. Melinda had her phone out from the moment I walked in. She filmed the decorations, the grill, even Dad flipping burgers like he was hosting a cooking show. Every few seconds she would squeal, "Content!" and post another clip to TikTok. I rolled my eyes but stayed quiet. Then came karaoke. Dad had rented a cheap machine from a party store. Melinda shoved the mic into my hands. "Come on, Serena, sing something!" Everyone stared, my throat went dry, but I picked a song anyway. Halfway through, I knew I sounded terrible. The notes cracked, my voice wavered. People chuckled, I tried to laugh it off. What I didn't realize was that Melinda's phone camera was still pointed straight at me. She caught every second, my awkward dance, my off-key notes. The moment Dad slapped his knee and shouted, "This is comedy gold!" I thought the humiliation would end once the song was over. I was wrong. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a notification. TikTok. Melinda had uploaded the video with the caption, "My sister thinks she's the next American Idol." By the time I watched it, the clip already had over 5,000 views and hundreds of comments. People I didn't know were calling me tone-deaf, cringe, a total mess. At first, I couldn't breathe, my chest locked up, hands shaking. I stared at the screen as if maybe I'd misread it. Maybe this was a prank, maybe she hadn't really posted it. But then another notification popped up. Jenna Collins, my coworker at Blue Peak Labs, had tagged me. I walked into the office later that day, and the air felt different. Whispered laughter followed me from the elevator to my desk. Someone had the video open on their monitor, muted but still looping. My boss glanced at me, then looked away. Jenna tried to soften it with a nervous smile. "Don't worry, Serena, it's just a silly video." But it wasn't silly, it was my life, my dignity. My family had turned me into a joke for the world to see. I wanted to scream, to grab Melinda's phone and smash it into pieces. But instead, I smiled tightly at my coworkers, sat down at my desk, and opened my laptop as if nothing was wrong. Inside, my stomach twisted into knots. That night, as fireworks cracked in the distance, I lay awake in my studio apartment in Portland, phone lighting up with more notifications. The video had jumped to 10,000 views. Strangers kept commenting. Some asked for part 2, some begged Melinda to post more. One comment read, "This is gold, post her singing again." Another, I can't stop laughing. She's hilarious without even trying. Every word felt like a punch in the gut. I scrolled through the comments until my eyes blurred. Some mocked my voice, others mocked my looks. And mixed in were likes from names I recognized. People from my high school, old neighbors, even a cousin. They weren't defending me, they were laughing too. I closed the app, tossed my phone across the room, and pressed my face into the pillow. My body was shaking, though I wasn't cold. I told myself I could ignore it, that internet trends die fast. But deep down, I knew this wasn't going away. Melinda had found a way to weaponize humiliation. And the worst part, my own parents thought it was funny. For years, they'd kept their ridicule within the walls of our home. Now they'd open the door wide and let the whole world join in. And that was just the beginning. I kept telling myself it couldn't get worse. Maybe the TikTok would fade after a few days. Internet attention spans are short, right? But my family wasn't done with me yet. 2 nights later, another notification lit up my phone, this time from Facebook. I wasn't even tagged, but someone from our old neighborhood sent me a screenshot. It was my mother's post. A blurry picture of me, slumped in a lawn chair at the barbecue, cup in hand, hair a mess, eyes half closed. Her caption read, "My daughter, the life of the party, such an embarrassment sometimes." The post had over 60 likes and a string of laughing face comments. Names I recognized, old neighbors, church friends, even my aunt chimed in. LOL, classic Serena. My stomach dropped. This wasn't Melinda chasing clout anymore. This was my mother deliberately inviting her entire social circle to laugh at me. The woman who was supposed to protect me had turned me into entertainment. I scrolled through the comments until my chest ached. One neighbor wrote, "At least Melinda's the talented one." Another added, "Poor mom, raising a kid like that." Each line dug deeper, carving into whatever self-worth I still had left. At work the next morning, Jenna leaned over my desk. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked softly. I wanted to say yes. Instead, I forced a smile and said, "Just tired." But my inbox told a different story, an anonymous email with a screenshot of the Facebook post, subject line, "Thought you should see this." I felt trapped. My family's cruelty was no longer confined to family dinners or passive-aggressive comments. They had exported it, packaged it, and shared it with the world, and the world was laughing. That night, I drove out to the edge of Mount Tabor Park, parking my Mazda CX-5 under a streetlight. I sat there for an hour, phone buzzing non-stop. More likes, more comments, more ridicule. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My reflection in the windshield looked like a stranger, eyes swollen, mouth tight. I thought about deleting my accounts, disappearing, pretending none of it existed. But then another thought crept in. Why should I be the one to vanish? Why should I pay for their cruelty? The fireworks had ended days ago, but the sound of explosions still rang in my head. Every laugh from those comment sections echoed like a firecracker, sharp and mocking. When I finally walked back into my apartment, Harper, my best friend, was waiting with takeout. She saw my face and didn't even ask. She just hugged me and said, "You don't deserve this." Her voice cracked with anger. Her words planted a seed. For the first time, I stopped thinking like a victim. I started thinking about evidence, about receipts, about how my family wasn't just cruel, they were careless, and careless people leave trails. I told Harper about the time I caught Dad signing papers with my name, about the weird credit card bill that showed charges I never made, about the text Mom once sent calling me her ATM daughter. Harper's eyes widened. "Serena, that's not just mean, that's illegal." Her words hit me like cold water. Illegal. Suddenly, the humiliation wasn't the whole story anymore. It was fuel, proof, a trail I could follow. As Harper handed me a carton of lo mein and chopsticks, I opened my laptop. I pulled up my bank statements, my emails, even old screenshots. My hands were still shaking, but a new kind of energy flowed through me. They thought humiliating me online was the punchline. They thought I'd stay quiet forever. But they had no idea what I was about to reveal. The night of the family meeting wasn't planned by me. It was their idea. Dad called and said, "We need to clear the air. Everyone's been talking." His tone made it sound like I was the problem. Like I was the one who needed to apologize for being humiliated online. I didn't argue. I just said, "Fine, I'll be there." What he didn't know was that I wasn't coming empty-handed. I drove my old Mazda CX-5 out to Gresham, a thick folder sitting in the passenger seat. Inside, printed bank statements, screenshots of texts, and a USB drive. My hands kept tightening around the steering wheel. This was it, the moment I stopped letting them write the story for me. When I walked into the living room, the smell of pot roast filled the air. Mom, Irene, was already seated on the couch scrolling Facebook. Melinda had her phone ready, as if she planned to live stream the drama. Dad stood with his arms crossed. "Sit down," he said, pointing at the recliner. His voice was calm, too calm. I sat. For a second, no one spoke. The silence pressed against my ears, then Mom started. "You really embarrassed this family, Serena. That video went everywhere. People at church are asking questions. Why do you always make things so difficult?" My laugh was short, sharp. "I embarrassed this family? You posted a picture of me passed out online." Dad's jaw tightened. "We're just joking around. If you can't handle a joke, that's your issue." The words snapped something in me. I reached into my bag, pulled out the folder, and placed it on the coffee table. "Then maybe you'll find this funny." Melinda leaned forward, curious. I flipped open the first page, my bank statement. Highlighted in yellow, a $4,200 withdrawal I never made. Next page, a $7,500 personal loan opened in my name, with Lowell Whitlow's signature scrawled across the form. Dad's face drained of color. That's not... I cut him off. "Don't bother. I spoke to the credit union. They confirmed it was opened under my social security number. The contact number listed? Yours." Mom shifted uncomfortably. "This is ridiculous. You're making us look like criminals." I turned the page again, this time a screenshot of a text message. From Mom's phone, dated last year. "Serena will cover it. She's basically our ATM anyway." The room went silent. Melinda blinked, eyes darting between our parents and me. For once, she wasn't smirking. "You stole from me," I said, my voice steady now. "You mocked me, humiliated me, and then used me like a bank account, and the whole time you laughed." Dad's voice shook. "You don't understand. Families help each other. That's what this is." "No," I snapped. Families don't forge signatures. Families don't post their daughter drunk on Facebook for strangers to laugh at. Families don't treat their child like garbage. I slid the USB drive across the table. "This has everything, screenshots, bank records, even the email receipts. I backed it all up." For the first time in my life, my parents had no words. Their mouths opened, closed, but no sound came out. I looked straight at them. My hands weren't shaking anymore. "This is just the beginning. And trust me, you're not going to laugh your way out of this one." Melinda set her phone down slowly. For once, she wasn't filming. She whispered, almost to herself, "What did you do, Dad?" The air in that room felt heavy, like the moment before a storm breaks. And they didn't even know the storm had only just started. For a few seconds, no one moved. The only sound was the clock ticking on the wall. Then Dad exploded. "This is all fake," his voice cracked. "You photoshopped this junk." "You've always been dramatic, Serena. Now you're lying to make us look bad?" Mom jumped in. "She's twisting everything. That text was taken out of context. Families joke like that all the time." My jaw tightened. "You call stealing my identity a joke?" Dad's fist slammed against the table. The folder shook, papers fluttering. "Enough. You think you're smarter than us? You think some silly screenshots will prove anything?" His words were loud, but his eyes were afraid. I leaned forward. "It's not just screenshots, Dad. I didn't come here alone." Right on cue, the front door opened. The sound of polished shoes against hardwood echoed as Caleb Drummond stepped inside. Dark suit, leather briefcase, calm expression. He looked nothing like the chaos swirling in that living room. Dad's face went pale. "Who the hell is this?" Caleb introduced himself, voice smooth. "Attorney at law. Ms. Whitlow asked me to review certain documents. I've confirmed with the credit union and the county clerk's office. These loans were indeed opened under Serena's name, and the signatures do not match her verified record." Mom stammered, You can't just walk in here and accuse us." Caleb didn't flinch. He pulled out his own folder, slid a certified affidavit across the table. "This is a notarized statement from the bank. Lowell Whitlow, you forged your daughter's signature multiple times. Irene, you used her information without consent. These are felonies." The room erupted. Dad's voice cracked into a roar. "You don't scare me with your papers." But his hands were trembling, his face blotched red, sweat gathering at his temples. Melinda whispered, almost in disbelief. "Dad, is this true?" He spun toward her. "Shut up, you don't know what you're talking about." But the damage was done. For the first time, Melinda wasn't on his side. She looked at me with wide eyes, the phone forgotten in her lap. Caleb's tone sharpened. If this goes to trial, you're looking at fines, restitution, and possible jail time. Identity theft is not a joke. It's punishable by years in prison. And I assure you the evidence is airtight. Mom gasped, clutching the armrest. Jail? No, this can't. I cut her off. You didn't think about jail when you were stealing from me? You didn't think about consequences when you turned me into a meme. Dad's face twisted with rage, but there was nothing left for him to say. Every attempt to deny, every excuse, collapsed under the weight of Caleb's calm authority. Harper, still by the door, folded her arms. Serena doesn't need to beg for your respect anymore. She has proof. She has people standing with her now. The silence that followed was heavy. For once, I wasn't the quiet one. For once, the power wasn't theirs. I looked at my parents, Dad shrinking into his chair, Mom trembling, Melinda caught between denial and realization. Then I said the words I'd waited my whole life to say. You don't get to define me anymore. This story isn't yours to tell, it's mine. The air crackled with a different kind of energy, not humiliation, not fear, control. And the best part, the real revenge hadn't even started yet. When I left that living room in Gresham, the folder of evidence was lighter in my bag, but my chest felt heavier than ever. For the first time, they were silent. No comebacks, no laughter, just fear. But fear alone wasn't enough for me. They had dragged me into the spotlight with their jokes and their posts. I was going to drag them into the spotlight with the truth. The next morning, I walked into Ross & Keller Law Firm with Caleb by my side. The receptionist handed me a clipboard, and as I filled out the paperwork, my hands didn't shake. For once, my signature wasn't being forged. It was mine, bold and steady. We filed charges for identity theft, fraud, and financial exploitation. Caleb explained the process, subpoenas, depositions, hearings. Words I never thought I'd understand suddenly became part of my vocabulary. This won't be quick, he said, but you have the kind of evidence cases are built on. And Serena, he looked me straight in the eye, you're not alone anymore. I drove back to my apartment in Portland, the July sun glaring off my windshield. My phone buzzed nonstop, but this time I wasn't hiding from it. I was planning. That evening, I set up my tripod in the corner of my living room. The white wall behind me was bare, my laptop perched on a stack of books for the right angle. Harper sat on the couch, offering silent support with a nod. I pressed record. My name is Serena Whitlow, I began, voice low but firm. You might have seen me online recently, humiliated, mocked, turned into a joke. What you didn't see was the truth behind the laughter. I held up a page of the bank statement. The camera caught the yellow highlight, the numbers. My own parents opened loans in my name. They drained thousands of dollars without my consent. When I confronted them, they laughed. Next, I shared the screenshot of Mom's text. Serena will cover it. She's basically our ATM. I paused, letting the words sink in. This is what my family thought of me. Not as a daughter. Not as a person, just as a resource, an embarrassment, a punchline. For 20 minutes, I laid it all out. The favoritism, the online humiliation, the theft. My voice cracked sometimes, but I didn't cut those parts out. I wanted it raw, real, undeniable. When I finished, Harper whispered, "That was perfect." I uploaded the video to TikTok, then to Facebook, then to YouTube. Within an hour, the views started climbing, hundreds, then thousands. Comments poured in. You're so brave for speaking out. Parents like this don't deserve kids. This is beyond toxic. It's criminal. By the next morning, the video had over 250,000 views. News outlets started reaching out. A local Portland blog ran the headline, "Daughter exposes parents' cruelty and fraud in viral video." My parents had wanted attention. Now they had it, just not the kind they imagined. At work, Jenna walked over with wide eyes. Serena, your video's everywhere. People are calling you the face of standing up to toxic families. I smiled for real this time. Not because I was happy, but because for the first time, the story wasn't theirs. It was mine. Still, as the notifications kept flooding in, I realized something. Revenge wasn't the end. Going viral wasn't the end. This was just the beginning of something bigger, and I was ready for it. The first paycheck that came in after my video went viral felt different. Not because the number was bigger, it wasn't, but because I knew it was mine, untouched, safe. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid that someone else was using my name, draining my account behind my back. 2 weeks after filing charges, I signed a lease on a studio apartment off Hawthorne Boulevard in Portland. The place wasn't fancy, hardwood floors that creaked, one small window overlooking a row of food trucks, and a kitchen that barely fit a coffee maker. But when I carried in the first box, I stood in the middle of the room and whispered, "Mine." I furnished it slowly, piece by piece. A second-hand couch from Craigslist, a desk from IKEA, a thrift store lamp with a shade slightly tilted no matter how many times I adjusted it. Every item was chosen by me, paid for by me, placed exactly where I wanted it. And for the first time, I felt free. Harper came over almost every evening. We ordered takeout, sometimes Thai, sometimes burgers, and ate cross-legged on the floor, laughing about the chaos of moving. "This feels like a reset button," she said once, handing me a carton of pad Thai. She was right. Work at Blue Peak Labs shifted too. My manager called me into his office one Monday. "I saw your video," he admitted awkwardly. "You've been through hell, but the way you told your story. That's what makes a great researcher: empathy, clarity, courage." He slid a folder across the desk. A promotion, a raise. My throat tightened, but this time it wasn't with humiliation, it was with pride. Even outside of work, things changed. Neighbors in my new building waved when we passed in the hallway. Strangers sent supportive DMs. One woman wrote, "Your story gave me the strength to leave my toxic parents too." I sat with that message for a long time, realizing my pain had turned into someone else's hope. I also gave myself permission to enjoy life again. I bought a used bike and rode along the Willamette River on weekends. I joined a pottery class downtown, my hands finally shaping something fragile into something beautiful. One Friday, Harper and I treated ourselves to dinner at a small Italian restaurant. Red wine, candlelight, laughter echoing against brick walls. For years, I had been the family scapegoat, the one who never measured up. No, I was building a life measured only by my own standards. And yet, late at night, sometimes the old voices tried to creep back. "You're still not enough. You're still a joke." When they did, I opened my phone and scrolled through the comments under my video, the ones filled with strangers calling me brave, calling me strong, calling me free, and for once I believed them. One evening, I stood by my window as the city lights flickered on. Food trucks sizzled below, people laughed on the sidewalks, and a breeze carried the scent of fried dough and coffee. I realized I wasn't alone anymore. Not really. I had Harper. I had new friends. I had thousands of people online who had seen me at my lowest and still chose to stand with me. That night I whispered to myself, this is who I am now, not their joke, not their ATM, just me. And for the first time in my life, that felt like enough. Justice didn't arrive overnight. It came slowly, piece by piece, like dominoes tipping over in the right direction. The first to fall was Dad. Lowell's reputation in Gresham had always been built on being the reliable plumber, the guy neighbors trusted with their pipes and repairs. But once the story spread, once people learned he had forged his own daughter's signature, his phone stopped ringing. Reviews tanked on Yelp, the credit union pressed charges. By the end of the summer, he'd lost half his clients. And the same men who used to slap him on the back at barbecues now crossed the street to avoid him. Mom didn't fare much better. Irene had thrived in her little online bubble, Facebook groups, church events, gossip chains. But when my video reached her circle, the tide turned. The same women who once laughed at her jokes now whispered behind her back. At Sunday service, pews around her sat empty. She tried to defend herself online. Family business should stay private, but the comments shredded her. Words like toxic, heartless, and abusive stacked under every post. For someone who lived for likes, the silence hurt more than anything. And then there was Melinda, my sister, the self-proclaimed influencer. Her TikTok following had ballooned when she first uploaded that humiliating clip of me. But the internet has a funny way of flipping the script. The same viewers who laughed at me turned on her once the truth came out. Her comments filled with words like bully and backstabber, the video brands she hoped would sponsor her quietly cut ties. One company even posted a statement, "We don't condone online harassment." One night, Melinda went live crying, insisting she didn't mean harm. But the damage was permanent. The followers vanished, the sponsorships dried up, and the spotlight that once made her glow now burned her instead. I didn't grin watching their downfall. Not exactly. What I felt was closure. They wanted the world to laugh at me. Instead, the world judged them. Strangers filled my inbox with messages. Your story gave me courage to cut off my toxic parents too. Or watching them face consequences gave me hope. For the first time, I didn't feel like the joke. I felt like the proof that cruelty catches up and silence doesn't have to last forever. And as I stood in my small studio apartment looking out at the Portland skyline, I realized something simple. Revenge wasn't about destroying them, it was about reclaiming myself. Still, the irony wasn't lost on me. They wanted everyone to laugh at their daughter. But in the end, the only ones people laughed at were them. When the dust settled, I found myself standing in a place I never thought I'd reach: peace. Not the kind of peace where everything is perfect, but the kind where I finally know my worth. For years, I begged my family for scraps of validation. I wanted them to notice when I did well at work, when I tried hard, when I showed up despite everything. And every time they ignored me or mocked me or turned me into a joke, I swallowed the hurt and told myself maybe next time would be different. But here's the truth I had to learn the hard way. Sometimes family is just a word. Love isn't automatic. Respect isn't guaranteed. Blood doesn't erase cruelty. I think about all the nights I cried myself to sleep after another insult, another dismissal, another reminder that I wasn't their favorite. I think about how small I felt when they posted me online for laughs. And then I think about where I am now, standing on my own 2 feet, building a life that has nothing to do with their approval. The revenge wasn't just exposing them, it wasn't just filing charges or going viral. The real revenge was taking back my story, rewriting it on my terms. Because in the end, what mattered wasn't their laughter, it was mine. The laughter I share now with Harper over takeout. The laughter I hear from coworkers who respect me, not mock me. The laughter that comes from freedom, not humiliation. And that's what I want you to remember, if you're listening to this and thinking of your own family. Maybe you've been dismissed, maybe you've been mocked. Maybe the people who were supposed to love you the most made you feel the smallest. So let me ask you this, if your family humiliated you online, if they reduced you to a joke for the world to laugh at, would you forgive them? Or would you finally fight back? Because I chose to fight back, and it changed everything. If you connected with my story, if you've ever felt the sting of betrayal from those closest to you, know this, you're not alone. There are people out there who will see your worth, even when your family doesn't. Sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the one you're born into. And if this story hit home, do me a favor, hit the like button so more people can find it. Subscribe to Heartless Revenge so you don't miss the next tale of betrayal and justice served. And please, share your own story in the comments. You never know who you might inspire. Because stories like these, they're not just about revenge, they're about survival. They're about healing. They're about proving that no matter how much someone tries to tear you down, you can still rise. I did, and so can you.